Welcome back, Ellen.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Today we're gonna just, kind of get into the weeds about this potentially problematic frame that a lot of people have with relationships.
Yes, into the weeds we go.
Yes, let's do this. And we're gonna talk today about masculine, feminine relationship dynamics and why even using those terms can be problematic and challenging.
Yeah, it can be limiting and
Yeah,
not helpful, even though I think people are offered them in a way that is meant to be helpful.
I think so. Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's frame it first.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll start with just my experience with one of my mentors years ago, David Data, who was amazing, and I learned a ton from.
Mm-hmm.
Really grateful for him and his work, and my interpretation of his work and what I see so many men do, having listened to someone like David Data. And if you don't know David Data, you should Google him. David Data, Way of the Superior Man was one of his most popular books. And essentially the frame is, if I'm a man and you're a woman and we're in a heteronormative relationship, I need to be more in my masculine, which will help you be more in your feminine. And that polarity will create sexual charge and we'll have a great relationship. Great sex life, great relationship, as long as I'm really in my masculine and you're in your feminine. If this sort of teaching goes, if two of us are in our masculine or two of us are in our feminine, that's not going to work out very well because it's not a polarity. And anyway, over the years, a lot of people sort of teach relationship stuff that is basically saying the man, and they equate masculine with man, the gender, male, and feminine with woman. And it's like, hey, the masculine's job is to blank, and the feminine's job is to blank. And so basically they're saying the man's job is to blank, and the woman's job is to blank. Now, David Data, actually, to his credit, did offer a disclaimer, which was, it doesn't matter which one of you is the man and which one of you is the woman. But to create
polarity.
Yeah, you need a polarity here, and you need to create that kind of charge between the two of you. Someone needs to be the masculine, someone needs to be the feminine, to have good chemistry, to have a good relationship.
Wow. There's so much here already.
This is my interpretation.
Yeah.
I'm just willing to just own that right up front. That and what I see a lot of people do with this, and why Ellen and I think this frame around intimacy is very limited.
Yes. And there's so much to unpack there, just as I listen to you talk about it.
Yeah.
Like the sort of assumption that we all have a shared understanding of what traits are masculine and what traits are feminine. I feel like that's just a whole world of, we could talk for just
potentially
a day about that.
Yeah.
And just as I hear you talk about it, I am reminded of why that frame, which feels black and white, although I think you're saying that it's not necessarily meant to be, or that's one interpretation of it.
Yeah.
But it feels like it assumes that it assumes a lot. It assumes a lot about masculine and feminine. And I just struggle with, if we even step back a bit, because this may be true for other people, that I struggle with just masculine and feminine and the traits associated with each of those labels, because I think because of the society we live in and the, I don't know, patriarchy, misogyny, like all the layers of challenge for women, I feel like the feminine traits in this model are seen as less than, negative by our society. I'm not saying David Data or this model is saying that, but I think in society, the way those traits have been polarized, the masculine qualities are more socially supported. And so that, and I'm not going to try and unpack what all those are right now, but basically what I see happening is that men and women start to distance themselves from these quote unquote feminine qualities or traits because they're not seen as positive.
Yeah.
They're seen as more problematic.
Right.
Or just more difficult.
Like being in your feelings, for example.
Being in your feelings, being relationally oriented, being sensitive or emotional. Like if I just even took those, it feels like no one gets to have that. Like women kind of don't get to have that. Men don't get to have that part of themselves. And I think when we put masculine and feminine on things, because we're in such an intensely gender identified society, it's really hard for any of us to separate out masculine from male or feminine from female. And so, or masculine from men, feminine from women. And so in my mind, it just goes right to men and women, even though I know that that's not how it's maybe meant.
Right, which is not how it's really taught, but that seems to be how most people receive it.
Yeah, I just think it's extremely loaded in our society that's very, very gender oriented, and we have really prescribed gender roles from a very young age, and we're socialized into them very strongly.
Yeah, so let me ground this with an example that we can work off. And we see this in our practice over the years.
Yeah, I want to talk about how we see this might show up in couples work.
And how we most often see this show up. We were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah.
Most often it shows up as a couple struggling, and the woman is perceived as angry and frustrated with the man who is not being enough of a man. He's not in his masculine enough. And then the man is like, right, okay, I need to be more masculine. Let's say he's a nice guy, or he's more sensitive, or he's more of a people pleaser. Perhaps this is often how people label this in the couple even, or a doormat or something like that, which again, all have negative connotations, right, for the quote feminine. And the woman is really frustrated with her man because she's doing everything. She's not only holding down the home, but she's got a professional career. And then she gets mad because the man isn't acting like a man enough.
Yeah.
Or, quote, masculine enough.
Or he's not, like, initiating enough. Or he's not... There's some judgment from her that they both seem to agree on that he's not being masculine enough, whatever they've decided that means.
An example from years ago, a client of mine, his wife would get really mad because she would say to him, where do you want to go to dinner tonight? And he would always say, I don't know. What do you want to do? And that deferring back to her to make the decision was infuriating for her. And her judgment of him was, you need to be more masculine and make decisions.
When that could have been about so many other things. It could have been about so many other things.
But this is what couples who receive this kind of download around masculine and feminine, this is what they start to get into.
Yes, and it's how they start to explain their relational challenges, which from my perspective as a therapist and coach are so much more complex than this. So much more complex, typically, that it has way more to do with how each person has been socialized, trained, indoctrinated into how they do relationship and how they do close relationships. It's way less about, to me, about masculine versus feminine energy.
I'm with you. Yeah, and I think spiritual people might latch onto this the most, this masculine feminine energy thing. And all we're trying to offer here is some of the challenges and what maybe to do instead.
Yes, because I think people... I haven't seen anyone in my practice over the years that has made a really ongoing progressing leap forward as a couple with just this model.
Me neither. And I saw a couple actually recently get divorced who's been married 20 years because they were using this model and this model didn't cut it. When in actuality, what would have helped them more is some of the stuff we teach here on this podcast around attachment dynamics. One of you is more pursuing, one of you is more distancing. Like this couple could never get around that issue because it got labeled as male, female, masculine, feminine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've seen too, is that people get sort of stuck in that frame and then they can't see all the other nuances going on around the human experience when it comes to relationship. Like there's just so much more to explore
Yeah.
and to grow and develop in ourselves beyond just one side of this energy, I guess.
Yeah. So can we come back to the example and just unpack it a little bit of like, again, how it gets labeled is angry woman who now is getting perceived as, quote, too masculine, is making all the decisions, and passive male who's more like anxious and sensitive, getting made wrong for how he's being, and he needs to like be more of a man.
Yeah.
Which is, again, what he got as a boy growing up is stop being so sensitive, stop being so relational, stop, acting like a girl, and other, again, the misogynistic indoctrination that boys receive from a very young age. Now he's like, okay, got it. I should be more, I shouldn't be this sensitive. I should be more of a man. But being more, quote, more of a man is part of the problem here in the first place. Is I'm going to be too direct. I'm going to be the patriarchy. I'm going to be, I'm going to abuse my power. I'm going to, if I don't feel, that's actually problematic.
Right. That will be the next complaint coming.
Yeah.
That you don't know what you're feeling. You don't talk about feelings enough for me. You need to be more empathic
and sensitive
and soft or whatever.
Yeah, nurturing, relational, whatever. And so now, again, you can start to see how complicated this is for a man who identifies as man, a male gendered dude. It's complicated.
Yeah, he can't get it right.
He's fucked, right? He can't get it right.
He can't get it right. And it just feels like another, like I think of boys growing up and getting kind of an assault on themselves, not being able to inhabit the relational, empathic, nurturing side of themselves. And then now they're getting that message again as an adult in their intimate partnership that part of them isn't welcome.
Yeah.
And I think for women too, what women also don't exactly come out on top here, because I think as women, we want to be able to express all sides of ourselves too, just like I would like men to have. And there's this way in which, it's just both people end up not being able to inhabit a full expression of a range of traits and ways of being, and to figure out how to balance not only themselves out, but each other out over time.
Yeah. Greetings, listeners. Thanks for listening. Are you new to the Relationship School or my work? If you're new, you'll probably want to head over to relationshipschool.com/group to join our free private Facebook community that's growing, that's huge, and very, very active, where you can get challenge and support around your relationship issues, problems, inspirations, wins, losses. There's our certified coaches are in there, and there's just a big group of like-hearted, like-minded people. If you feel yourself like alone, God, where do I connect to fellow podcast people? It's this place, relationshipschool.com/group. Okay. I do Facebook Lives in there occasionally. I answer questions, and you're going to also get access to some free recordings, okay, that no one else has. So relationshipschool.com/group. If we come back to this client example, the female is also like, okay, right, I can't be this emotional.
Right.
I can't actually be angry here and resentful and frustrated. And also I can't be this direct, powerful, in charge, decisive, whatever people associate with masculine, right? Again, because that's also problematic. And I need to be, quote, more in my feelings, and so it gets complicated for a woman also.
It just gets complicated, and it doesn't, I just don't see it helping people. It becomes more of a should. I should be more this way. You should be more that way, which doesn't help people. Yeah.
And even if we're can we look at the non-binary situation?
Yes. Yes.
So again, even if you're gender non-conforming or non-binary, there's still, and you use labels like masculine and feminine, you're still back, I think, in the same box. Of one partner needs to be more, quote, masculine, be more of the man, even though you're not a man, and one partner needs to be more of the woman. And yes, if you've noticed, if you pay close attention, no matter where we are in this gender spectrum, under stress, one of us tends to maybe act more like a traditional male, and one of us might act more like a traditional female if we're going to be making stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if we get below that, we're just talking about people being upset.
Totally.
That's all we're talking about. It's just someone's upset.
Yes.
And something's not working here.
Yeah. And this is the conversation I like to have, which is more about, okay, we have polarities in our nervous system. We have a sympathetic nervous system that's about activating and taking, about ramping up. And we have a parasympathetic nervous system that's about calming things down and slowing down. Like we have those energies inside of us. And how do we work with that together so that we can create an alive, vital relationship that suits us?
Yeah.
That's often what people are struggling with is where did our vitality go? Where did our energy go?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a piece of work for all of us to do just in our own nervous system about how we bring ourselves into more energy or calm ourselves down, and how we work with each other in our close relationships and regulate each other.
Yeah.
Because we are regulating and impacting each other whether we want to or not.
Totally.
we can always do better with that, I think.
Yeah.
And I can get behind Chinese medicine, yin and yang.
Yeah.
There's sort of like a waxing and waning in the universe and in the natural elements and in the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
In yoga philosophy too, there's two kinds of energy that we work with, like a spectrum of energy that you work with. Like that makes sense. But I think we get really, when it becomes masculine, feminine, because we have so much charge around gender roles and our own gender identity and how people express that, I just don't think that we can, I just haven't seen couples be able to work with that in a way that feels empowering and inviting and sustainable, that hasn't eventually become a negative label or a judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to come back to two things you said there. Yeah. Again, in short-term relationships, if you're wanting to work on sexual energy, for example, between the two of you, I think this model has merit up to a certain point. Because again, the polarity, it for a lot of people is what creates the electricity between two people. Is there's an opposite going on that the other person is cultivating or expressing in their body. Mm-hmm. So that has, okay, I can get behind that. Mm-hmm. And coming back to what you said around these opposites, that Ellen and I think are taking, we do subscribe to this view of opposites, that there are polarities existing with people. And when you partner with someone, essentially we could say, if you want to take a more spiritual view, is that you're attracting disowned parts of yourself. So let's say I, quote, attract an angry woman into my life that I'm labeling as an angry woman.
I know. I'm like, right? Please.
Or an angry partner. And let's say I'm Mr. Nice. I don't get angry, quote, ever.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Right? If we just go with like nice or critical, that polarity.
Yeah.
Right? Nice and critical. Let's just call it that. Well, it could be that I've attracted this partner into my life so that I could actually be more critical. And this partner has attracted me into my life because they need to be more nice, because they're more disowned in that nice sort of camp. Mm-hmm. So I like thinking about things like just opposites. I tend to, if you haven't noticed over time, if you've been in a long-term relationship, in some ways you've attracted your opposite, or they have traits of yours that you judge, despise, dislike, or look up to, want to be more of, etc. Either way, that's an opportunity for them to kind of teach you, just by how they live their life, to own more of those traits in yourself. I like that.
Yeah.
I can get behind that. And to me, that has nothing to do with masculine, feminine.
No. Yeah. I think if we put the masculine, feminine label on it, all of a sudden becomes really, just the judgment is...
It's
hard.
really tricky.
It's hard. It's really tricky.
It's really tricky.
It's really tricky. It's hard to be like, oh, I don't judge masculine or feminine. I just think that's really hard to do, given how deep the collective unconscious judgments are.
Well, and how we seem to not be able to tease out gender from masculine and feminine.
Yeah,
like I can get on board with, again, masculine, feminine forces in the universe. I'm down. I'm interested in that conversation. But As soon as I put it on a person,
Yeah.
it's harder. And another way to think about it is left brain, right brain. That's how I
Right.
prefer to work
Right.
with this. If you
Yeah.
understand the brain and different characteristics of the left brain being more logical, the right brain being more nurturing or relational. Okay, that sounds interesting because it's sort of backed by science.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
the brain is pretty well studied here. And I think that might be more useful
Yeah, it
for
might be
people.
more useful. It takes some of the like people being judged for how they show up as a man or how they show up as a woman, which again, it's still very thick in our society. We're raising kids and we're in a bubble inside a bubble here
Yeah.
in our world in Boulder, and it's still very obvious that the gender socialization is strong.
And strong.
And it's
Even as, quote, inclusive as things are now, they're still
yes.
so gendered.
Yeah. So it
Right?
is I just want people to not underestimate how hard it is to separate out the masculine feminine language from these judgments around how we're supposed to show up in our gender. And I just see people kind of struggling to have that frame feel empowering to them as an individual and as partners over time.
Yeah, I agree. So instead of like labeling your partner as, quote, too masculine or not feminine enough or whatever, it might be more interesting, and I think you're going to see more traction here in your own relationships if you just say, you know what, gosh, I'm with a partner who's very conceptual and logical and more of an engineer's mind, and has a hard time feeling their feelings, whether that's a man or a woman or someone who doesn't identify.
Right.
It's just you have a partner who struggles to feel their feelings. Okay, what do I need to do as their partner to help them there? How do we
work with
how
that?
do we work with that? And chances are maybe I also am the same way, or maybe I'm the opposite. I'm a feeler, and that's how I try to work through conflict. Is I'm not in my mind. I'm just all feeling. Well, again, that diversity, as Ellen and I have said before on a podcast, is your superpower as a couple.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you have two people who are very different that's an asset, actually. Right?
Yeah.
Especially as like parents, or if you're going to go into business together.
Right. You want to range.
You want to range. You want to be different.
Yeah.
And you are different.
And not made wrong for that, or told that that's somehow not welcome.
Yeah.
Often because of your gender. Again, I just have to keep saying, because I've seen this so many times now, where a man or a woman is judged as not masculine or feminine enough. And I just think it reiterates painful messages that we've gotten. And I've seen some people be able to be more willing, or like willing to work with that energy in themselves, maybe, but I haven't seen couples use it very productively.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to offer some other ways of approaching some of these places where the couple loses their vitality and energy, and how to work with it or address it through other means.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we all want to be understood and accepted for who we are. And that's what your work is, to understand and learn to embrace this person, which doesn't always mean staying with them. But I think to understand what makes a person tick, it's usually a lot more complicated than someone being too or not enough masculine or feminine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And it's an opportunity, again, to get to know their history and where they come from. And you know, part of my journey, absolutely, as a, quote, gender-identified cisgendered male, I can definitely say I was conditioned by the boy code, and I bought into it hook, line, and sinker as a boy. And because of that, don't feel, suck it up, act tough, be in your head, don't be in your heart, prioritize yourself over relationships. Because of that, I turned into a young adult male who was very challenged in intimate relationships.
Right.
So yes, gender conditioning absolutely had a massive impact on my journey, right? But that's like if I just stayed there and you told me I need to be less of a man, more of a man, I don't know. Like if we used masculine and feminine, I don't know that we would get very far.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I don't think that would have invited more diversity or more capacity
Right.
into our relationship.
Yeah, and I needed to learn, like, I just needed to learn how to feel more.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that breakthrough helped me have a much, like, fulfilling relationships with my male friends, female friends, other friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say as a woman, there's still a way in which over time because of my feminist ideals and the way I internalized and read feminism, I still had a journey to make around accepting quote unquote feminine qualities in myself more fully. Even though those were more accessible to me, I was given more permission to have them. Figuring out my expression of those was, a journey I had to make. I really feel like in society, none of us really get to have the full expression of all the qualities, a full embodied expression of all these traits. And I would love for us to give all humans more permission for that, because we are missing out on, I think, some very important qualities that get labeled as not attractive, but are really essential for human relationships.
Yeah, and you want, ideally, your intimate relationship at home to be the place where you get to come out and express who you are, because it kind of isn't safe in a lot of contexts out in the world to just be nakedly who you are. Ideally, we're creating the kind of relationships where we get to kind of take that straitjacket off and be just nakedly myself, my messy, beautiful self. That's security. You want the kind of relationships that can handle all of you, and where you learn to work with that in each other. I mean, that's kind of the work of partnership. How do we get to know? Gosh, that part of you, Ellen, is very triggering for me. Gosh, how do I get to know that and work with that? That's that's love. You're practicing love. How do I love this person? It's hard. It's not always easy, right?
It's not always easy. And it's complex to sort through that together, and how to make what's happening between us feel good to both of us, not just one of us.
Yeah. Okay, anything else before we pause?
No.
I mean, we'd love you to share your thoughts here. There's a couple of places you can do that. This is your action step, is first of all, talk it out with a friend. Listen to this and be like, oh, this was interesting. Or maybe it confronted you. Maybe you disagree with us. Great. Talk it out with a friend, and then feel free to email us at info@relationshipschool.com. Let us know what you thought. Or you can certainly comment on a social media post where we shared this podcast. But we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're in pain relationally and you need immediate support, our coaches can help you. I've trained almost 100 coaches at this point, relationship coaches that are amazing humans, and they have the chops to help you get through this hard time, this hard moment you're going through. Or if you want to actually hire a coach and have someone in your corner to continue to up-level your communication skills, your listening skills, your conflict skills, these folks are incredible. Okay. So all you need to do is go to relationshipschool.com/MRC. That stands for My Relationship Coach. So relationshipschool.com/MRC. Right? If you want immediate, direct, effective help, check them out. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Share one of these videos with a friend. We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships. And you are one of them, so thank you.